So for those who don't know us, I think most of you do, but I'm Nick Reed, and with Kate, we're the co-chairs of Herefordshire Green Network. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's gathering, and if you've not been to a gathering before, they are sort of thematic discussions. Obviously, pre-COVID, they were in person, but at the moment they're on Zoom. And we're delighted tonight to have three speakers, but Yolanda is going to introduce the speakers. Just a few housekeeping rules, if you don't mind. Would you mute yourselves while the presentations are going on? I'm not suggesting we do a round robin, and as Kate suggested, if you can introduce yourself in chat, please do. But when it comes to questions, there might be an opportunity to talk a little bit about who you are and let us know. We'll try and answer all of the questions tonight. If there are any leftovers in the chat, we will get back to you. And this evening, it is being recorded. So we hope that's okay with you. This is part of a sort of an initiative that the Green Network is doing, allied to something we call the Great Collaboration, which is working with parish councils locally that have declared or are about to declare a climate and ecological emergency. And we're trying to resource our parish councils within Herefordshire to make the most of the opportunities so that we can all become net zero by 2030. So that's our long-term objective. And if you want to find out more about the Green Network, and particularly if you're not a member and you'd like to become a member, at the end of tonight's meeting, we'll leave the channel open. Wendy will be available to talk to you and sort of excite you about the possibilities of joining up with us. So hopefully that's okay. Without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Yolanda, who's going to introduce you to tonight's speakers.
Great, thank you, Nick. Hi, everyone. Thank you to the Herefordshire Green Network team for organising the gathering. It's an absolute fantastic turnout already, and we're expecting more to turn up. My name's Yolanda. I'm a Herefordshire Council councillor with a portfolio around food sustainability, but also health and well-being. Food is an essential need and is much more than just growing food. It's about having access to fresh, vital, local seasonal produce, access to land to grow the food, knowing where the food hubs are and where the communal gardens you can join. It's also about recognising the underlying benefits of food, the positive mental health, the physical well-being, the biological and psychological aspects of being outdoors and the social, being social on the allotments. It's also having a positive impact on our DNA and our immunity, which is an important point with COVID around us at the moment. The diversity of our diets is reflected in the diversity of our gut flora. So we are mobile composters, and I think that that's an important point too to think about when we're thinking about food. So this session is around food sustainability across Herefordshire, and I'm hoping that you'll learn some about make new connections, but also have new opportunities to do something yourselves. Therefore, I'm delighted to introduce the two main speakers, Kristan Pritchard, who is a Health Improvement Practitioner at Herefordshire Council and a true advocate of food sustainability. And Pete Norton from New Leaf, who has a wealth of experience and knowledge around local food projects. But with, and again, thank you for letting me attend, and and I'm going to be one of the facilitators. And it's over to you, Kate, to actually explain your role and the workings of the actual session, if that's okay, the practicalities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Yolanda. So we're going to have short presentations from Pete and from Kristan, and then we'll move straight from there into breakout rooms, when we're going to set a couple of questions for your breakout rooms, and we're also all going to simultaneously work on Jamboards. And Jamboards are great fun. If you've never used them before, there'll be somebody in your room who has and who will help you with that, and you'll be able to see the other breakout rooms also adding their ideas onto the Jamboards at the same time as you are. They're basically big post-it note boards, but virtual. And then we'll bring those discussions back into the whole group again at the end of that experience. and there'll be a chance for Pete and for Kristan to answer any questions and to put their own inputs into the conversations you've been having, and we'll be done by 7 o'clock. So thank you very much. So I'm going to, without more delay, I'm going to pass over to Pete and Kristan.
Hi, I'm Kristan. As I've already been introduced, it's great to see some familiar faces. I'm just turned my camera off so that you don't lose me. I'm a little bit nervous about my internet connection, but I will turn it on so you can actually see who I am later if you don't know me. So that's the reason why. So I'm just going to introduce the Sustainable Food Places model to you and the reason why we started looking at it. And then Pete will continue with a little bit more detail about what it actually is and the key issues and the focus of the model. So to give a little bit of background, I work in the public health team, and one of the areas of focus is obesity for me. And we've been looking at the best way to tackle obesity and how we can tackle obesity locally. It's an issue for everyone nationally. We've all got increasing rates of children and adults who are becoming overweight and obese. And the Sustainable Food Places model was kind of brought to our attention. Whilst it does focus on food specifically, it very much is a whole systems approach, and it includes much collaborative working and partnership working. And I guess it contributes to a local whole systems approach to obesity. So we felt that food is a big part of addressing the issue, and the SFP model takes that system-wide approach to food, and it includes networking and working with partners. And I think we've got some really strong partners and groups in the county who do some really great work around food. So the model also links with a number of work streams within the local authority. I'll just name a couple. One being the Talk Community model, so focusing on communities, working with communities, and building resilience, etc. So that's one really strong link. Another really strong link that we're working on and developing plans around is our link to the county carbon plan. I'm currently the lead for the food aspect of that, and part of the Sustainable Food Places model really focuses on food waste and other areas that impact the carbon footprint of food. So I'll hand over to Pete to give a little bit more detail now about the model. So I don't want to cause any confusion, so I think it would be great for him to go through the model so you can understand each key issue and the focus of it. So over to you, Pete.
Thanks, Kristan. Wendy, would you, I'll give you a shout when I want you to put the slides up, if that's okay. Have you got that PowerPoint there okay? Yeah, all right. So actually, more what I'm going to do to begin with is do a bit of context setting. So I'm Pete Norton. My hat at the moment, I have various hats, and I know a lot of you with different hats, is as a new LEAF member and also as newly appointed Sustainable Food Places coordinator. So it's really great to be here and to be able to introduce, you know, this new initiative that's developed as part of our work as a food alliance and a food partnership. The title of this gathering is Sustainable Food Places, Spaces and Hubs, and the background to that, if you like, the context for that is a fundamental question, and that fundamental question is a critical one to pin down. It's critical for reasons of health, it's critical for reasons of the environment, and it's critical for reasons of the economy. And that question is, what is a sustainable diet in the 21st century? What does it look like? Now, food is universal, everybody eats, and it also defines us culturally and shapes the landscape. Also, economically, the agri-food sector is worth 120 billion to the UK economy. Wendy, would you put that slide up now, please? The first one. Okay, so this first slide in the middle there, if we take the 3 pillars of sustainability to be planet, people and prosperity.
Sorry.
That's okay. Then in the middle of that is food. Okay, so that white arrow, sustainability, we could place food in there. And yes, if you could move on to the next one, Wendy. The agri-food chain, well, there you go. That's a description. It's the largest manufacturing sector in the UK in terms of its value. So not only is it fundamental to our health, fundamental to our environment, but also fundamental to the economy. It perhaps has the biggest impact on all 3 of those pillars compared to any other aspect of our lives. So to add to that, most of the richer countries in the world issue clear guidelines for a healthy diet. So if you think of, public health 5-a-day campaigns, eat well guides. So if you could move on to the next slide, Wendy, please. Oh, wrong one. Keep going. I must have given you them in wrong order. They've come in a different order. Keep going, I'll tell you when to stop. Oh, never mind. Never mind, that one didn't appear. I think there's been a translation issue from Mac to PowerPoint, but never mind. Okay. Most of you know the Eat Well plate and the 5-a-day guidance. Most rich countries in the world issue that guidance. It's for a healthy diet, but none issue guidance for a sustainable diet just yet. And we need that clear guidance in the same way that we have clear guidance on healthy eating. And if you like, it's the triple bottom line of food. That's what we need the guidance on. There has been a lot of work on this over the years. There have been campaigns, grassroots projects, NGOs, local authorities, and governments have worked on it. The Swedish government were way ahead on this about 10 years ago. And I think it was about 2015 when they presented their extremely well-researched and considered guidance to the EU as a possible model to use for all EU countries to adopt. But it was quite quickly pushed back by powerful business lobbies, because telling people to eat less meat and less dairy and to eat local and seasonal is potentially a barrier to free trade. So finding this balance of giving us that guidance, agreeing that this is a healthy and sustainable diet, but the interests of the economic lobby as well, it's a tricky balancing act. So where are we up to in Herefordshire with this? About 10 years ago, we published, the Herefordshire Food Partnership published a sustainable food strategy for Herefordshire. Somewhere on those slides, there's a picture of there it is. If you go back one.
Back on, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, and again. And again. There. That's it. That's what it looked like. It was a plan for a more sustainable local food system. Unfortunately, global financial crash and a change of government meant that resources and motivation became more scarce, and we didn't get the traction we needed to implement what was recommended in that strategy. In the meantime, already been referenced, lots of grassroots projects and initiatives going on in the county and exemplary work happening, and we'll hear about some of those in a minute. So fast forwarding to 2018, we re-established a food partnership and called it the Food Poverty Alliance, because reflecting the times we live in, those of austerity, the issue was around food access and food insecurity. Some work was done to assess the nature and the level of household food insecurity in the county, otherwise known as food poverty. And somewhere we've got a map of, there we go, risk factors in Herefordshire. So this map, as you can see, the dark red areas are those that are most at risk of food poverty. And we measured a lot of different metrics to find that, because it's not measured on its own merit. As well as this, we're taking part in some national research looking at COVID responses to food poverty, how and what happened to pick up the slack during the lockdown. And the data from that research will be valuable when we look at how food actually gets to people during a crisis, and actually what the food supply chain could and should look like. And that's crucial for all of our well-being. No one wants to go hungry. Is it the MI5 quote, reckon we're only 4 meals from chaos? So it's such an important thing to our well-being as a society, our individual well-being, and that as of a society. I think the original quote came from about 1906, and it was 9 meals from anarchy. But you get the picture. There's been lots of people who 4 meals, 9 meals, 3 meals. But anyway, there's a certain amount of meals before it all kicks off. Okay. So that brings us back to our original question: what does a sustainable diet look like? And so the Food Alliance has now broadened its remit to look at food through multiple lenses and try and influence various sectors in the county to work towards a more sustainable food system. And that's why we decided to adopt the Sustainable Food Places model. And if you scroll through those slides a minute, Wendy, that one, there we go. This is the front page of Sustainable Food Places. And this is a national programme led by the Soil Association, Sustain and Food Matters. It's funded by Esme Fairbairn Foundation and the National Lottery. And it will link us to grassroots and strategic work happening all over the UK. So loads of different areas. Initially it was cities have signed up to the Sustainable Food Places awards scheme. So how it works is there are 6 key issues. So we've got another slide there somewhere that sets out those 6 issues. That's it. And they're good food governance. Okay, I'll read the ones off here. Promoting healthy and sustainable food to the public, tackling food poverty, diet-related ill health and access to healthy food, building community food knowledge, skills, resources and projects, promoting a vibrant and diverse. So these 6, interestingly, made a mistake here, are from the original 2010 Herefordshire Food Strategy, but they're very similar to the key issues of the Sustainable Food Places model, which I'm going to read out now. Good food governance, which is all about strategic and collaborative working, food alliances, food partnerships. Good food movement, which is about grassroots activity, active citizens, community projects, food culture, that kind of thing. Healthy food for all. So looking at food access, diet-related ill health, obesity, food poverty. Sustainable food economy. So looking at how we maintain a vibrant local food economy, especially in Herefordshire. Catering and procurement. So there's a big opportunity there for schools, colleges and other public sectors, public sector users of food, such as hospitals, and around here the MOD as well is potentially a big one. And how we develop and support local supply chains that can service those contracts. And then finally, it's food for the planet. You know, the climate and nature emergency, waste, how food is produced and distributed, land use, local, seasonal, all of these issues, you know, would fit into a title of Food for the Planet. I remember once being asked a question by a senior executive at a large, not to be named, local chicken processor. You might be able to guess which one. And he said to me, is agriculture an extractive industry? Is it an extractive industry? Well, the problem is an extractive industry like mining inevitably at some point destroys its own productive capacity. And if agriculture carries on in an intensive way, think American Dust Bowl in the 30s, it does the same thing, destroys its own ability to keep going. So I asked the same question back to him, but he avoided answering it. So we have to produce food in an environmentally beneficial or at least benign way if we're to be able to feed a future 10 billion people within planetary boundaries. The good news is all kinds of people are working on this right now. There's been a lot of work over the last few years. So practical projects like the forest farming project in northern France, which is being measured by a local university to look at the productivity of a small football field sized horticulture, permaculture, forest garden project, producing a phenomenal amount of food. Academics like Tim Lang, Feeding Britain, a book he published last year. Don't know if anyone's come across that. Professor Tim Lang is the only professor of food policy in Europe. Brilliant guy, and just, you know, pins down the data on all this stuff. He argues that Brexit is an opportunity for us to review our food system. So if we want to look for positives, that's a potential positive. The Lancet Commission, 37 world-leading scientists. I think we've got a slide on this one. Perhaps we can scroll through and have a quick, there we go. 37 world-leading scientists asking the question, can we feed 10 billion people within planetary boundaries? They answered yes, but impossible without transforming eating habits, improving food production, and reducing food waste. And they're talking about a great food transformation. Something we, you know, those who've been in the transition movement and the green movement for a long time understand that kind of description, I suppose. And we even have a UK food strategy on the go at the moment. I think we've got a slide for that as well. There we go.
Oh, sorry.
That was it. A vision and a plan for a better food system. Secretary of State for the Environment, George Eustice, talking about climate change, biodiversity loss, and the need for affordable, healthy food. Now, I know that some of you will remember Hilary Benn's Food 2030, published in 2010, food strategy of the previous administration, which was excellent, but it was ditched as soon as the government changed 10 years ago. Well, they're writing another one now. They do well to look at the one that was written 10 years ago and pick up some of the things that were in there. Anyway, the good news is that a healthier diet is also a more sustainable diet. So there's bound to be those conflicts in certain areas between health, economy, and the environment. But the summary advice, I like Michael Pollan's summary advice. Michael Pollan's an author most renowned for his food books, one in particular in defense of food, and his advice still stands up. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Okay, that's it. That's all you need to know. And given all of those things we've considered so far, working across all aspects of the food system could resolve some of today's most pressing social, environmental, and economic issues. So if you think of that, then we're going to ask a couple of questions. Before we do that, though, yeah, okay. The questions we're going to pose to you in a minute. I'll talk about some of the local projects that are going on. The questions we're going to pose to you shortly in the breakout rooms are twofold. First one, what do you think the biggest priority is to help us move toward a more sustainable local food system? And if you think in terms of those 6 issues mentioned for the Sustainable Food Places model, that will really help us to galvanize our thoughts and take on board your comments. Obviously, some things cut across several issues here. And second question, so first question, what do you think the biggest priority is? Secondly, what do you know of that's already happening? Grassroots or strategic initiatives, projects, anything which moves us towards a more sustainable food system. And that information will help us map activity and coordinate support. So just briefly then, I'm not going to spend too much time telling you about stuff that's going on in the county. I think a lot of you will know about a lot of these things, but I know that we're at least going to have one presentation from Pat Gordon from Growing Local shortly, just to tell us where they're up to. There's loads of stuff going on. I'm going to briefly mention some I'm a little bit out of date. You've got things like Applewood Permaculture Centre in the north of the county, down to Ross Food Hub in the south. Okay. Other examples, independent food banks all across the county, in Hereford and in market towns, some of which are actually food and social service hubs. You know, they're playing an extremely important role, and we've seen that even more so during the COVID crisis. You've got things like the living room cafe, the living room cafe, safe space, training space, and community larder, which is what they describe themselves as. Wendy, there's a slide for that somewhere. If you can scroll to
I'll scroll, Pete, but we've got about 5 minutes left before breakout rooms, just so you know.
Okay, I'm nearly done. I'm nearly done.
A bit over if you need to let people, other people speak, but that's just to let you know.
Sure. Okay. Well, I won't talk too much about that. We've got Community Cafe in Lempster, Hunderton Community Gardens, farmers markets, local food retailers, zero waste food shop in the Butter Market, organic box schemes. It's out there. There are things out there. I want to at least give Pat Gordon a chance to give us, because the amazing work they do, where they're at with their proposed community market garden project. So I'm going to stop there, pose those 2 questions for the breakout rooms, and ask Pat to tell us where they're up to. If she's here. Is Pat here?
I'm not sure that she is.
I don't think she is. Okay, had a conversation with her yesterday and said she would come and tell us all about where they're up to. My understanding is there's a proposal for a community market garden south of the river. The land has been identified. They're working on the how to make it happen right now. And there's a public meeting sometime in early February. And if you check out Growing Local's Facebook page or website, you'll find out more about that. And they're really keen for people to get involved. And this is a brilliant example of community supported agriculture, which is one of the things we're talking about, which will help us contribute to a more sustainable food system. Anything else? I think that's probably enough from me right now.
Thank you so much, Pete. That was so interesting. So I think in that case, we'll probably head straight into breakout rooms and give you all a chance to think about those 2 questions. So I think Wendy will probably put the questions into the rooms as well. But just to remind you, they are: the first question, what are our priorities for food in this county in order if we're going to move towards a sustainable food system? And the second question, what is already happening in Herefordshire that will start to move us along that way? Welcome back, everybody. I hope you found that useful. I hope you all enjoyed the Jamboards.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kate. That was great.
So I think what we'll do first is we'll have a go round from each of the rooms, and I'll ask one person from each of the rooms, perhaps the person who was facilitating, to just give a 1-sentence response on those 2 questions. You know, what we're feeling, or maybe a 1-sentence response which sums up the conversation you've been having. Basically, a sort of headlines go round, if that's okay. And I think we'll start with Tony, if that's okay. I think you were in one of the rooms, Tony Fagan.
I was. I didn't realise I was the facilitator, but we took over anyway. I mean, basically, it was about the connections, making sure that there are connections between producers and consumers, and connections between education and food, and so connections seem to be the very strong thing, sort of joining up all the dots.
Brilliant. Lovely, thank you, Tony. And Richard Abansky, I think you were in a room with people.
Sorry, I've got problems with my mic. Jenny, could you can I pass this one over to you?
I think connections is something that came into our conversations, and it was about distribution of food and not wasting food. So yes, certainly about how we do that. I'm going to go for a group effort here. Chrissy, do you want to add something onto that?
Chrissy, you're muted.
I mentioned the Leominster Food Bank food share table and the example that, you know, we can find other ways of redistributing surplus and excess and things like that, and developing that at a local level, as well as increasing accessibility to food for people who may not have the income to afford as much as they would like.
Can I say that I'm interested in producing food on a small scale, a micro scale, and what came out of the discussion was that not everyone is able or has the facilities to do that in time and space, and distribution seems to be really the main focus of our conversation.
Lovely, thank you, Richard. Andrew Dillahay, it'd be great to hear back from your group, either from you or from somebody else in the group.
Yeah, we had quite a wide-ranging discussion about what the priorities were, particularly. So it was about incentivising farmers and having local produce, fresh, seasonal and local, really. And two of the better thoughts, I think, were around education and how we can educate people about what that means, particularly using that through schools, and maybe cookery courses, although I think some cookery courses have been ongoing but haven't been very successful. But that's a way of tackling nutrition and the value of the contents of the food, as well as how to cook with it. And maybe something around a celebration of what Herefordshire has. It's a rural county with a lot of agriculture, and we should be really shouting that and getting our kids to advocate for all of these things.
Lovely, brilliant. Thank you so much. Pete, I think you were in a room as well. It would be great to hear back from the room that you were in.
Shall I take this one? Our group happy for me to do that. One thing that particularly came up was if we want to reduce food miles and stop exporting things for the sake of it, we need a good local infrastructure, and that's definitely something that we've lost. You need, rather than big centralized processing, food processing plants, we need to have more localized, smaller scale things like, if you're a meat eater, abattoirs, but other examples of that as well. What else did we? The other also came up for us, the connecting to local communities. So producers having a connection to their market, making that a personal connection rather than something that is very distant and unpersonal. And schools and education as well. So the Food for Life program, eco schools, healthy schools were all really good programs which were helpful in the changing of food culture in schools, and you need to get back to that a little bit. I think there's still a lot of that going on, but there's also a lot that's been lost over the last few years.
Thank you, thanks Pete. Beth, do you want to come in and talk about your group now?
Yeah, we covered quite a lot. I'll try and summarise. We talked about the desire to need to know what's out there in terms of grassroots projects and things. We talked about a map and kind of and the layers within a map and how to kind of filter these through to be able to find what's local to you. We spoke about schools as well, and looking at it from a Green Schools project perspective. I gave examples of some schools that in other parts of the country who had excess and had sold their excess to local restaurants, you know, and that money would go back into the school or charity. And so there's a lot happening out there, but we spoke about the fact that there's no curriculum incentive to do that. It is an extra, and it depends very much on feet on the ground, a dedicated member of staff and or volunteer to help push those and to keep it going and running for many years. And we spoke about what parish councils could do, and you know, the fact that land is very, very expensive, and mapping some of that wasteland and some of the spaces that perhaps aren't being used in the best way possible. I think that's everything. Did I miss anything?
Great, lovely, thank you. So I think I've got rooms, a room that Yolandi was in. Possibly room.
Sorry, is that me, Kate?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, I'd like to really thank Anne, Maggie, Rod, and Tim for their contributions, and I hope that they can jump in. Some things have already been said, but one of the things for me that came out was tackling the myth and the fears about growing food, cooking food, and storing food. I think that it's also about putting kitchens back into school. That was a really key one, and many people would rather go out and buy something because that's what, you know, is kind of like that neural pathway. It's the easiest, rather than thinking, oh my God, what do I have to do? And it's trying to debunk all that myths and make it a lot more accessible. And also we were raising about, you know, sometimes it's really quite scary on allotments, you know, because it can get quite competitive about how big your carrot is or what your garden looks like. So it's kind of making them more friendly places. What else was there? Because there were so many things and I was busy typing. So Tim, Maggie, Anne, Rod, is there anything else that you want to say? I think information was the other thing, wasn't it? Access to information and knowing what's going on in your local community. Anything else, guys?
I think we were looking at the twofold thing of reducing waste, and therefore we could use that waste or surplus to tackle food poverty.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Maggie, did you want to contribute anything?
Great, okay. Maggie, anything you wanted to add, or we'll go on to...
Sorry, I was turned off. Done it again. I was very interested in what we were hearing from Ross about food poverty, and like that you can't assume that people have got access to cooking facilities, which I certainly know. We've got parents that have got broken ovens, you know, that we're trying to find stovetop foods for. So it, you know, it's the whole range, really.
Yes.
Yeah, and no exit, and that's what, you know, like Tim's project is, you know, he's working with people who don't have facilities, you know, like cookers or fridges, or, you know, so yeah, it's about that equality. I thought what Rod brought up as well, he brought up 3 points, and one of them is around the equality of the food distribution.
Fantastic. Wonderful, thank you. I think Nick, you were in a room. It would be great to hear.
I was, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we I won't go through it in exhausting detail. We've drawn vast international experience, at least as far away as Suffolk, with some of the ideas that we wanted to introduce. But I think we felt also that the elephant in the room, which is often unacknowledged but hugely important for Herefordshire, is what we do with our ruminants. Because so many of the dietary guidelines that Pete was talking about are about reducing red meat. So much of the stuff on greenhouse gases is about significant reductions in red meat, and yet Herefordshire is full of grazing ruminant animals. So as a priority for Herefordshire, how do we broker that debate and try and move that forward while still maintaining the economy of our farmers?
Thank you. Yes, really important point, and a very tricky one to tackle locally. Have I covered all the rooms, or is there a room I've missed? I think I've covered 7 rooms, and I think there were 7 rooms. If I haven't, please unmute yourself and shout out. No, okay, I'm assuming that I have. So we've got a little bit of time when if anybody would like to ask questions specifically of Pete or Kirsten, or come back to any of the issues which have been raised there, or perhaps if you would like to hear a bit more, for instance, if Tim, you'd be happy to say something about the Ross Food Hub, or others of you who are running projects locally would just like to take just a minute or two to say something headliney about the work that you're doing, it would be great to hear that. I'll let you shout out, because I can't see everybody in my screen, if I'm honest. So do unmute yourself and shout or wave or put up one of your little, I want to talk hands in the.
Can I just say that definitely in our room it came across that local is a real focus. So keep things local, and I think that really comes into the connections theme that has also come up in each room. So that's very, very interesting. Seems to follow the same line.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about also in terms of education is also the fact that actually lots of people can't cook. They don't know how to cook, not only young people. And I was quite concerned to hear at one of the corporate parent panels from care leavers who were saying that they were leaving care and that they had no idea how to cook, so they were buying the cheapest food. And apart from that, there was also the kind of social interaction around food, cooking food and eating food, sharing food. So there are massive health implications in that, and poverty implications. And so education around cooking food, I think, would just be so great.
Thank you. There are a number of projects, I think, that do some of that locally, isn't it? Kids Kitchen is one, and I know that Rebs isn't here, but they're doing online cooking classes for young families at the moment. So that's happening through lockdown. So maybe we'll try and get a link to that and send that around to you all.
We have quite a lot of local cooking programs, growing local, deliver a number. Healthy lifestyle trainers, Herefordshire Council trainers deliver a number of cookery programs. They're now available online as well. They're doing Zoom sessions weekly for families with ingredient lists, etc., all planned ahead. So that's really great at the moment on Wish.
And in terms of the connections, does that go out around parish councils and get into local newsletters, presumably? And
yeah, so we're trying to get it as far and wide as we can. I mean, I'd be really great if I could share it with the group. They have sessions planned over the next, I think it's at least 6 Fridays. They do them on a Friday evening, but then they are available online all of the time. So they're live on a Friday, but I'll share those with you.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks, Kristan.
Yeah, if you share them with me then, Kristan, because the weekly HGN newsletter goes out to about 500 people. So yeah, put it in there and I'll get it out somewhere else new. And it goes out to parish council members as well from there. So yeah, send it to me.
So we've got a question in the chat, and then we'll go to Yolandi's question. So a question from the chat. Anyone with good experience of CSA, please to share. Anybody who'd like to jump in and answer that? CSA being community supported agriculture. Do we have somebody who could respond on that in the room, in our large room?
Yeah. Not specific detailed experience, but there is a program of support for CSA. I think it's still going, which was run by the Soil Association, and actually Rachel Harries, who is ex-Herefordshire resident. She was the support person for the CSAs at one point, may or may not still be in that role. And of course, what that does is links you up with all of the other CSA projects going on in the country. And that kind of peer-to-peer connection is really helpful.
Lovely. Thanks, Pete. Yolandi?
Yeah, just picking up, it's so funny how we all know these connections. Is that, yeah, Rachel Harries is actually now working for the Woodland Trust, and Andrew is connected with the Woodland Trust. So if you need to get in touch with her to do maybe a session on, around that, that'd be great. We can bring her in. I just wanted to remind people, and I forgot to do it in my opening speech, is around there is funding through the Talk Community Hubs if people really do want to set up a local food project that is part of a Talk community, and that gathering is on the website, isn't it, Wendy? And groups can actually go for £2,500 as an initial setup to set up projects, and these food gatherings and these food projects will really help to build community resilience, and that's what we're really keen on in Herefordshire Council, is looking at how we can make communities more resilient, and building and growing food and access to food projects and sociability for so many of the aspects that I've said before, because it hits on every level: mental, biological, psychological, you know, blah blah blah. So that's something that you can find on the website.
Lovely, thanks, Yolandi. I think that the funds that are available there for groups that are setting up is really important. £2,500 to set up a local project with Talk Community Hubs, but with a food focus is quite exciting for communities. We've got a few minutes. Tim, are you up for saying something about the Ross Food Hub? Would you be happy to jump in and just illuminate us a little bit about the work?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Yes, I oversee a community garden in. Oh,
you still there?
Are you all still there?
We're all still here. Yeah.
Sorry, I knocked you all on the head there. I oversee a community garden in Ross-on-Wye, and we mainly support adults with learning disabilities, mental health illnesses, and we just wanted to have a stronger connection with the plants that we were growing and getting out onto people's plates and tables. We've been providing fresh vegetables and fruit to the food larder since about 2013. So we've just set up a local project with some other individuals and charities in the town called Ross Food Hub. And I guess as Pete was reading out that list from sustainable food places, it's 5 or 6 things, I was thinking that's pretty well the same kind of things that we're wanting to do as well. Really, so all great stuff. And so the first thing we wanted to do was to try and reduce food waste in Ross. So we've started a little outdoor stall called the Zero Waste Stall, and we now operate 6 mornings a week, and we collect from supermarkets. It's surplus food, and we started at the end of October, and we've given out 2 tons worth of food just in the last couple of months. So it's been great, but I think it kind of changes the story and the language around food and food poverty. So it means that anyone in that queue for food could be someone who's passionate about food waste next to someone who's just really struggling financially and just wants be able to access some food as well, really. So so that's where we're up to. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Tim. And that's really important, the comment about the sort of destigmatizing of accessing real food, I think, or accessing food, and it not being something which it was something we talked about at a gathering that we had a couple of years ago when Jackie, you came along, and Pete, you came along, and we talked a lot about projects that we're setting up in the county at that stage, and how we made food feel really accessible. Yolandi?
Yeah, just to, I've just put something in the chat. If people want to contact Andrew or me, just go on our website. We grow quinoa and amaranth and quite a few plant proteins. Andrew is the head gardener. I'd like to think of myself as the glamorous assistant, but you know, that's a stretch. But no, seriously, I think we've learned to process quinoa on a very small scale. Our main garden is only 20 metres by 8 metres, but it's a fantastic food protein, and it's so easy to process. All you need is a car mat and an old-fashioned rubber car mat and a crock to release the seeds, but and a bit of a winnowing. So yeah, but it would be really great. As Jenny said in the chat previously, it's great to meet like-minded individuals, and that's really exciting.
Fabulous. Thanks, Yolandi. That's quite an inspiration, isn't it? Growing quinoa in your backyard. Any other questions for Pete or for Kristan or for Tim or for others in the room with other connections and contacts. Again, do shout out if I'm not noticing you. A number of you have put notices in the chat about different projects that are going on around Herefordshire. If any of you want to speak to any of those, that would also be really great to share that with the whole room.
Is it worth reminding people that they can save the chat if they want to as well? So
that's a very good point. Yeah, so if there are notes going into the chat that you would like to have access to for future reference, you can just save the chat by clicking in the little bottom right hand corner.
The other one I'd like to raise with people is if people are really interested in a community food hub, which is involving volunteers, I really highly recommend the Dean Forest Food Hub, because it's a closed system and it's just a wonderful project where they're enabling small producers like, we like selling £5 a week worth of produce, but but it's about 50 small producers who don't have to be associated with the or registered with Soil Association, which is like £500 a year, but they vet you and then they come and pick up, so it's a website where you're able to actually upload what you have available on a weekly basis, and the clients click on the website and there may be 50 other producers, and those lists are then we pick on a Friday morning to pack, and that's picked up at a distribution point, and the client actually gets their food at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's an incredibly closed system. It was I think runner-up or shortlisted for the Food and Farming Awards as a community project, but it's a really inspiring, and that's again the Dean Forest Food Hub.
Fantastic, thank you. Anybody, anything else you'd like to add? One of the things that that we is set up a number of sort of themed groups so that we enable a sort of better speed of peer-to-peer learning across the county on certain key themes for environmental response. So food is definitely going to be one of those, and setting up a group which starts to think about the great food transformation for Herefordshire feels as though that could be quite an exciting opportunity as we bring these sort of incredible projects which people are talking about here together to inform and to excite opportunities and further action. Tony, you've got your hand up.
No, it was a thumbs up.
Oh, it's a thumbs up.
I think Kate, you were slightly muted at the beginning of that. I think I was saying that's through the Herefordshire Green Network. So we have got some of the groups that are here tonight are members of HGN, but if you are a food group, then please sign up to HGN. The more people we've got, like Kate said, the more we can actually make those connections and have more targeted groups. Also individuals too, and there's a chance to indicate that you're interested in food. So yeah, that's a small plug from me.
Can I just also jump on that too, to actually say is that if anyone's got any ideas about what gatherings they would like around food or around community resilience, please put them in the chat, because there's so much wealth of information and knowledge in the room, and people might know about biodynamics, people might know about permaculture, people might know about, so many other ways and techniques. And I think that, if you've got something that you'd like to learn more of, I'm sure that the Herefordshire Green Network team would be happy to facilitate that.
Very much so. And we'll certainly be putting all of this into the mail, which will come out on Friday. So if you're not already signed up to receive our mailings, then also do that. I think if nobody else has anything you would like to dive into this space, I appreciate it's quite a large room, and it's great that you're putting so much on chat. So we are gathering information from all of you in that way. It's a little bit daunting to maybe leap into the number of people who are here, but We've got another couple of minutes if anybody has something they would really like to share with us all. Tony, I see you.
Yeah, now my hand is up. I just wanted to say, as a school meal producer, that we get free fruit for schools, and it comes in, and we get apples from, well, we used to, we probably won't get them anymore, so maybe that's a good thing. But we used to get apples from kind of, you know, places in Europe, and you just think in Herefordshire, that's absolutely crazy that we're feeding children apples from that aren't grown in Herefordshire. So that, you know, that is something about kind of commissioning that we seriously, as a council, we need to look at.
Yeah, fantastic. And also, again, that sense of connections, which everybody spoke to so much, making the connections and making the connections local. Great, thank you. I think I'm going to pass over to Nick to do some rounding up for everybody.
Okay, thanks, Kate. I'm not going to round up particularly. I would just like to flag up some of the things that have come up, and the latest of which is from Kristan, who is pointing out there is a food alliance in Herefordshire, and if you're interested in joining that, please get in touch with her or with the Green Network, and we will put it to her. So that meets on a fairly regular basis by Zoom at the moment, but that is looking at some of these issues, and in particular at food poverty and how we make sure that the county is well fed. I'd like on your behalf to thank Christian and Pete for their presentations, also Yolandi and Kate for sort of keeping us in order, but also behind the scenes for Wendy and Beth, because these things take a bit of putting together and all of the publicity, and without their help, none of this would happen. Chiefly, though, I'd like to thank all of you, particularly if you've not been involved in a gathering before. I mean, we hold these on a fairly regular basis. We don't have a date for the next one, but it's likely to be in February, and it's likely to be on community solar panels. But they do vary. But we're also interested in any topics. So if you feel there are things that we should be discussing as the Green Network, please beat a path to our door. And in particular, if you know of speakers that we could invite to lead some of these, that's also a great benefit to us. And can I also add to my colleagues a plug for the network itself? We'd love it if you would talk about the network to your colleagues, to your parish councils, people at work. And if you don't know more about us, as I say, Wendy is going to hang on after this meeting. If you can bear yet another 10 minutes of Zoom, please talk to her about what the network is trying to do. I mean, we're trying to be a voice for Herefordshire. We're fitting in with what's already happening in the county and trying to give momentum to that. And as you probably know, the county has adopted a zero carbon target by 2030 with enhanced biodiversity. So we're trying to ensure that that happens. And we particularly see our role as being the link to community groups across Herefordshire. That's our strength. So we're really interested in talking to you. Please do keep in touch with us. But otherwise, stay safe, stay well, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we can actually see you properly as opposed to on a computer screen. But thanks very much for coming this evening.